All right, y'all, welcome to the Mad Rhythms Podcast Network. This is the Either And Podcast, and I'm your host, Brill Barrett. When there's contention and controversy, most people believe the solution has to be either or. I believe the solution lies somewhere in either and. Welcome to the Either And Podcast. I am your host, Brill Barrett, and this episode, we're going to be talking with Mark Howard. Now, what's your exact title? I know it's founder.
Well, you know, in our positions, we just make up our own titles.
So what's your supreme founder?
I'm like this really cool founding artistic director
of
both the Trinity Academy of Irish Dance, which is a for-profit school.
Okay.
And the nonprofit performing arts touring company, Trinity Irish Dance.
Okay. And when did all of that start?
When I was about 17, talked to teaching Irish dancing, and I'm 60 now. So a
couple of years ago.
And then the company came later, maybe 30 years ago.
So the school was first?
School was first.
Okay. So the company was kind of born out of the school?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on this podcast and have you be a part of this is because we've got a performance coming up together. So very quickly, let's touch base on that. So April 22nd at the Auditorium Theater is going to be a show called Rhythms of Resistance, featuring Dorrance Dance, of course, Trinity Irish Dance, and Mad Rhythms. But this isn't our first time working together.
No, that's the big stage downtown, so it's going to be a good night.
Right? Yeah. And I do think it's the first time that people are going to see all three of our companies sharing a stage that way. I think it's the best way I could say it. Like it's
revolutionary, really. And I really, you got to put some credit out there for the executive director, Rich, over at the Auditorium Theater. Because, you know, they walk the walk. Like they're promoting Chicago dance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Chicago arts, and giving that opportunity to all of us.
Yeah, no, shout outs to Rich, for real. And we're looking forward to it. So that's like, y'all should come. Y'all should get some tickets and come see. It's going to be a dynamite show. That's all I can say about that. But again, like I said, this isn't the first time that you and I have worked together. So let's go back. Let's jump back in the way back machine.
But I have a question. I know it's your podcast.
Oh, yeah. You can question me all you want.
Everybody listening knows Mad Rhythm. Does everybody know what that is? Everybody.
You know, that's funny. I don't know. I always assumed that everybody knew until people started asking
me. I'll tell them what that is. That's the real deal. That's the good stuff. That's the authentic, you know what I mean? Stuff that's born out of the same thing. Blues are born out of, you know, adversity meeting passion and resilience and heart. You know, it's represents Chicago. And, you know, I actually have this tap dancer from Mexico.
Okay.
That is in my dance company now.
Okay.
And some time ago when he joined, he asked me if I knew Brill Barrett. And I'm like, yeah, I know Brill Barrett. How do you know Brill Barrett? He's like, everybody knows Brill Barrett, you know? So that was interesting for me because when I met you, and let's go back.
Let's go way back.
I was, and I'm so excited to be here now to be with the Brill Barrett. But back when I met you, you were not yet the Brill Barrett.
I don't know that I'm the Brill Barrett now, but I'll receive that.
You were a skinny kid that would have forgotten his tap shoes, possibly, or maybe even his pants. I don't know. And it was kind of disappointing because you know who I was supposed to work with?
Who?
Ben Vereen.
Oh, wow.
And Ben couldn't make it.
So you got me.
So I got this guy named Brill Barrett. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that is hilarious.
All right. But anyway, no, congrats to you because, you know, I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that, man. It's been a long journey and it's still a continuing journey. But I never knew that, man. Ben Vereen was supposed to be.
Right.
And you ended up with me.
So how did you end up there? Who called you?
I don't remember who called me. That's how crazy that is.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was gonna, you know, it was an opportunity. I never, at that point in my life, I don't think I had many opportunities to work with other tap companies, much less other dance companies outside the tap world at all. Right. And then
3 days at Navy Pier we had in the early 90s.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
But one of the things I remember, and I always tell this story, is that you don't know something's not normal until somebody tells you it's not normal. So I thought all Irish dance companies did numbers with tap dancers and African dancers. Like, I thought the way you programmed the show and created work was a standard in the industry. And then to this day, I have not found many people that approached collaborations the way you do. So I'm just curious to know what brought that out, your approach to collaborations.
Well, it was just this idea that I had to put, hoofing and Irish step dancing together.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I grew up in this city and,
Mm-hmm.
so used to being part of this cultural melting pot,
Mm-hmm.
and turf was the name of the piece.
Yeah.
Turf is the name of the Irish peat that you burn in fireplaces.
Oh, see, now that I didn't know.
Yeah, in old cottages in Ireland, that stuff they get out of the field and it gets hard and they light it up. And turf as in the hood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was just a fun little idea to put you together with our lead male Irish step dancer,
Mm-hmm.
and then the company as a backdrop.
And his gang, his all-girl gang.
You weren't complaining. I don't remember any complaints.
No, I'm sure I wasn't.
And then we just did it for 3 days.
Yeah. But and then we also you took it to Milwaukee for Irish Fest.
Well, yeah, the biggest Irish festival in the world is out on the lake there at Summerfest grounds in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I didn't know that existed until you invited me to do turf there with you all.
Yeah, that was cool.
And it was pretty cool. And I will say, so here's the thing: we might. I want to jump into it right away. So obviously, tap and Irish dance are literally cousins. There's a lot of similarities, but one of the things that I've been on a mission for years. So the way I was taught growing up is the way probably most people learn about tap is that tap is literally half Irish and half African. And then some people, as Hollywood did its thing and as historians started to do their thing, whitewashing the history of the dance, it became like some stories will not even mention the African aspects of tap dance until, it's Irish something and English something and maybe a little African.
Or when it gets like cooler and more hunkered down and they don't understand it, they just call it hoofing. And then assign that to the black community.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I always talked about is so turf, again, was my first connection to Irish dancing and the Irish dance community. And even in that story, I mean, in that piece, it was about like the meeting of these two forms. And turf, literally, like you think turf war or turf, like they're on the outs with each other, and then through that battle, the great rhythms are made together. Later down the line, and I know that's another story we'll get into, I was in Riverdance, and in that we did a number called Trading Taps, which was very much like turf. But in that number, it was about once the Irish came over as immigrants, escaping all the nastiness and craziness that was going on in Ireland, poor Irish immigrants ended up living in New York, very close to newly freed black people, poor black people. And that's where some of the combinations or the collaboration then came. Mm-hmm. So even in that story told from what I like to say from the Irish point of view, it says we were doing this and we got there and they were doing that. And through this and that came some collaborations, but it never said Irish created tap dance. And so I was having these talks. So now that I'm on with someone who represents the Irish dance culture, what's your take on the history of tap dance?
Well, it's, gumboot dance.
Mm-hmm.
It's, again, through adversity, the Irish go through this period called the penal days.
Mm-hmm.
Where everything Irish was being taken away or tried to be taken away by the British. They were
Mm-hmm.
trying to Anglicize the Irish and
Mm-hmm.
wipe out all the traditions. And
Mm-hmm.
so, being Catholic, which is predominantly a Southern Irish thing,
Mm-hmm.
or, Irish step dancing or the Gaelic language itself were banned.
Okay.
So people had to go into safe houses to sort of teach children, these traditions, or meet at the river, quietly. So there was a moment where everything came back in a big way, the Great Gaelic Revival.
Okay.
In the late 1800s. And that's when Irish step dancing and all these other traditions started to get celebrated in competition, and that became this one-upmanship, just like in tap. And right. And so the Irish, when they came over here, they were part of, the no Irish need apply, bit of a downtrodden race, along with the Jews and along with the African Americans. And, we all ended up in vaudeville and, end of the 1800s, beginning of 1900s. Performing for everybody, and people would go to these vaudeville things and enjoy the singers and all the other entertainment, but they'd save all their sort of their love for the percussive dancers, and so those things came together there. I'm aware of that, and you would know more of the history than I. I forget what is the name of that great tap dancer, that black. Master Juba, right? So nobody could dance as well as Master Juba, kind of thing, right? So and then you and I both know, like, one of our company members was instrumental with Bill T. Jones in the Paradise Square thing.
Okay,
right? So last year that was here in Chicago, and there was a lot of good history being thrown out around that.
Yeah,
it's the 5 points we're talking.
Yeah. I learned a lot about some things in Paradise Square, but then I also had some issues with some things in Paradise Square. So we can get into that, but I wanted you to finish.
Yeah, I don't talk about the subject that much, but that gumboot dance stuff, just met Irish step dance, and it marinated in a way where both were responsible for, a lot of it, but there's other forms too that would have been mixed in there, right? So, yeah. And that history is written by the victor thing.
Exactly.
Whoever got a talk show, like, you have the power now with your podcast to make it just be, all from the motherland of Africa. And the Irish had nothing.
Well, but see, and that's the thing. I've never said that. When I tell the story, I talk about the. Definitely, Trey said it best. Martin Dumas III, a.k.a. Trey, co-founder of Mad Rhythms. We were doing this show, and we were talking about the origins of tap and hoofing it and how these things came to be. And he was like, well, it was clear that there was Irish influence. Certain steps that we have are literally called a front Irish, a back Irish. Yeah. Right. He was like, we gave the credit where the credit was due, literally in the name of the step. Right. So I think, for me, it's never been trying to deny the credit of the connection, but it's just that people are saying, like I said, he who writes the history,
right,
a lot of time tells or crafts the narrative.
I love that while we're having this conversation, you're wearing a T-shirt that says, "I'm rooting for everybody black." It's like 2 feet from my face.
I forgot I had this shirt on, but this is one of my favorites. It's Ray from this.
Andy's a big guy. Like, I think we have the same trainer, actually. You and I are.
Who's your trainer?
The tap dancing and Irish dancing is not working. The cheeseburgers are winning out. It's
interesting just to get on and have that conversation with you. There's definitely, I always say that there's definitely Irish influence in tap. I've never denied that. But it's some people who feel like if we can't say that Irish co-created tap, then you're not telling the truth or you're not giving the credit where it's credit due. And I'm like, but if they say we were doing this and they were doing that and we came together and created this thing, what were we doing? That's where Paradise Square can even come in. Paradise Square wasn't telling the story of tap. They were just telling the story of that community in 5 points and the coming together. But what I noticed was the Irish dancers in Paradise Square. I didn't know you had dancers that helped create that. So that's very cool. But when I saw the Irish dancers, it clearly was Irish step that they were doing. But then all the black people were doing this amalgamation of body, and it really didn't even look like gumboot, which is something you talked about. Yeah. So that's why I get into, like, I feel like the way the black artistry in Paradise was expressed wasn't quite what I would have thought it would have been.
You got to talk to Bill T. Jones, an incredible artist and
much respect.
Black man that's a contemporary international treasure. Right? But these folks don't all know all the history of
everything. And that's what I feel like. I feel like the history was just kind of glazed over in terms of creating the work that was uniquely what would have been West African looking or related, being at that time.
Yeah.
That's where most of the black folks here had come from.
Well, it's all homogenized into a Broadway thing out of necessity almost. You know what I mean? Right? So it's a Broadway thing.
That's true. But
I mean, you speaking as a black man that's, had to watch, like the Community, every cool black thing get popular.
Right.
Someone that's of my color does it, and suddenly
it's a cool thing or popular thing, but that's all. I feel like I have this same conversation whenever we talk about ballet not being the base of all dance,
right?
And some people understand it, but some people get pissed.
Now that's another reason why this performance at the auditorium is so important, because like our former cultural chair, Mark Kelly, the what's that title?
Of DK's. He
retired recently.
Right. But I feel like he was the chair. I know what you're talking about. Cultural, something like that.
For Lori Lightfoot and for Rahm Emanuel. So anyway, this is a guy who cares deeply about art being, with people in the street, not in these temples in Paris or on Michigan Avenue, right? So he has a lot to do also with, he helps consult with the auditorium, with many groups, right? Arts groups here in Chicago. So I'm very proud of this concert really represents, people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I will even say, just to tell this quick story about DK's, under Mark Kelly's leadership, Mad Rhythms, for a long time, we weren't a nonprofit. And then when we finally became a nonprofit, we started applying for grants. And one of those was an operating grant from DK's. And this was his last year. And so we didn't get the operating grant. But then here comes a letter says, here's a special thing from the commissioner. On his way out, he's giving you this money. Cool. And so I feel like he did like a presidential pardon of the money to Mad Rhythms. Yeah. But I appreciated that, because I was like, even when whatever the committee that selected said no, he was like, no, I think they need these funds. And so I credit him a lot for making that happen for us.
Because so much of the grant money goes to, ballet, so little goes to percussive dance or to any kind of ethnic dance.
Yeah.
African, Irish, doesn't matter.
A
smidgen of money goes there compared to, right?
Absolutely.
And then what everybody loves so much is the percussive
dance.
It's like,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
All of us hate, want some kind of gun reform, but that's not what happens.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
So this is an evening where it's going to get loud.
Yes, indeed.
And if it was good enough for, Prince, that building was good enough for James Brown. It was good enough for Bruce Springsteen. It's good enough for Brill and Mark and Michelle Dorrance, right?
I love it.
And it's just going to be amazing.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. And I think the three individual approaches to percussive dance are going to be very, very prominent, and just we want people to stop assuming and start just being open to it being what it is.
Right.
Is what I think.
Right. I probably forgot Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, they played the auditorium as well? Oh.
I hope not. The great Hootie and the Blowfish.
I like Darius Rucker, man.
I don't even know who that is.
That's Hootie.
Oh, got it.
See?
Okay.
Hootie left Hootie and the Blowfish, became Darius Rucker, started doing country music.
Oh, Jesus.
So I didn't even know I knew that much about Darius Rucker until just right now at this very moment.
Bless him. So,
but yeah, man. So I remember, and here's another thing. So every year, and I know Nico Rubio just came back from connecting with you all. Every year you all do a retreat. Is it a retreat? Is it an intensive? What is the event? I came for it, and now Nico, I think, was just there for it.
What are we talking about?
Every year at the end of the year or around the holidays, I think maybe you do a weekend thing, and maybe I'm bugging.
Right. Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about my school. We have this thing called Winter Weekend, and it's like a big, just a big
You're like, what are we talking about?
Party for all of our students. And we just go up into the Lake Geneva area and get a hotel up there and do all kinds of cool activities to spirit build. And
But you also
team build, and we brought in, we bring in a hoofer, or a hip hop instructor, whatever.
Just to expose them to some other stuff.
Just to have fun.
Nice. Yeah. That's nice. Well, I know, like I said, I know Nico Rubio, I think, was just there.
Okay, so now I know what you're talking about.
I didn't know what it was called. What do you call it? Just
Winter Weekend.
Winter Weekend. Yeah, that's hard to remember.
We don't want everybody to know. If everybody in Chicago goes to this thing, it won't work for us. It's just like a private event.
Well, I only brought it up because, again, I want to keep bringing up the fact that you constantly work with people outside of the Irish dance world. And I think it's a natural, it spawns natural collaborations. But for me, it just shows that you have such a great respect for not only other percussive dance forms, but just other dance forms. And you always, it's clear what your purpose is in terms of the respect of Irish dance and culture. But I also love that, like I said, I go back to Umoja. That piece that you created back, you remember what year that was?
No, but this is all late 80s, early 90s. That was on TTW. We did a thing, and Umoja, which means, unity in Swahili, I believe. And working with African dance and some East Indian dance, Natia.
Yep. And, that's the first time I think I ever saw Natia was in your show.
Yeah, and they got an Emmy for that, which was cool. And then we would just go to the bigger stages like Irish Fest in Milwaukee. And that caused a controversy there too. We ended up on in the business section and, in the editorial section is what I mean to say,
What was the controversy?
Just some racists running around Irish Fest, that they didn't like.
that you brought non-Irish dance or culture.
Big African dance company, and all those drums, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. Sad but fun. All the security guards had a good time. There were all these big dudes that couldn't wait to bounce around a few of the little rednecks that were hanging out. Yeah. They were thanking me for my collaboration.
But I guess I'm trying to, where does that collaborative spirit in you come from?
I think it's just being in Chicago,
That's literally the motivation.
Probably. I mean, I got off a boat literally with my mom and dad, from Ireland and England.
Now, what year was that? 17.
Yeah, well, Caesar Augustus was on the same boat, I think, even though boats weren't invented then. But we came on the Queen Mary in like the mid '60s, and I grew up in Rogers Park, and somehow I don't know how my mom and dad ever had the money to pay the tuition for me to go to St. Ignatius, but St. Ignatius changed my life.
He was on the west side almost.
Well, it was a little bit of diversity that was going on inside St. Ignatius too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, I'll never forget my first day of school. Some kid came up to me and he was intimidating me and butting in line for a volleyball game. All the freshmen know each other, and I pushed him off and. He came over to the soccer table and was saying, "We're going to humbug this year." And I was like, "What does that mean?" But basically, he later we became good friends. But he was just like, "Oh, you didn't know you're supposed to be intimidated by that?" Like, no, I didn't grow up with any ball and chain. My parents loved everybody, and they just felt grateful to be here, and they were immigrants. So I just think, dancing as well. When you dance, you get to go perform. Even as kids, you're younger than me, but I mean. If I had walked up and talked to kids, I would have been walking up to kids from every ethnicity at festivals and dance festivals, right?
Yeah.
We were all out there, and the thing that would really stop traffic would be African drums and Irish step dancing, and tapping and hoofing. So I think it's just being a Chicagoan, really.
That makes sense.
A big part of it.
Yeah, I tell people, I think I agree with you, but my collaborative spirit in a sense also comes from my early training as a tap dancer was street performing in the subway. And that's where I met Chicago because everybody took the trains.
Yeah.
And you had in rush hour traffic, you had, with 5 minutes in between trains to try to entertain people and get them to give you some money. So in 5, man, I created, my mentor, Mr. Taps, basically taught me how to create a 5-minute showstopper. And then that's all you had. Reset, try it again.
And when I took the train, down to Roosevelt Road in the late 70s, and then took the bus, over to Halstead, I mean, a million ways to die on the way to school in the late 70s.
Yeah.
But again, like, I didn't know the difference, which is great, and like my sister, she raised her kids in Park Ridge.
Okay.
And she wishes, like, they're great kids. They're all well-adjusted, but she wishes that she had raised them in the city.
Interesting. Just,
yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. That's very cool.
And or you just have parents that you're just open to everything, and you're just grateful. And so I think that, and I think the Jesuit like education too, the built-in crap detector they give you, so you don't really just buy into a lot of the negative energy that's in the world. You're always trying to seek higher ground. You're always trying to like follow the light.
Okay.
I think that's you have to talk, the people around you that raise you. As we said, reared in the elevator.
So I'm glad you said that, because then that brings me to the next question. So now within your company, you have a Mexican tap dancer, and then you have a black girl from, where's she from?
Oh yeah. She's from Florida, but her dad grew up in Chicago.
Okay.
But Fran's an Irish step dancer and a tap dancer. So he actually grew up tap dancing, and he saw.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You have a Mexican tap dancer who's an Irish step dancer.
Right, I do. And he lives in Mexico City, and he just got his O1 visa, by the way, for extraordinary. Is that what they call it? Extraordinary artist. So we're very happy about that. He can.
Oh, it's like a A1. It's like whatever the top tier visa is, or something like that.
Very special gifts, and we have another amazing nonprofit, Lawyers for the Creative Arts, to thank for that. But Riverdance that you danced in, we'll come back to that, right? I mean, Fran saw Riverdance.
Okay.
And as a tap dancer, he decided he wanted to learn that, and he actually. His father, and I've been to where he's from, in this little town outside of Puebla, Mexico, called Cholula. And, it's a 3-hour drive, two dance class to learn Irish dance.
Wow.
3 hours back every Saturday for like 6-7 years.
Wow.
And that's the kind of dedication.
The dedication and commitment.
I took a picture of him, or actually of his dad, he and his dad, with this little board that he used to, dance on as a child in Puebla, Mexico. And it's just a beautiful story. And now he's headed to Japan this summer on a 3-week tour.
Oh, wow.
And he'll be at the Auditorium Theater on stage, and he's got more gears than everybody else because of that tap dance. So there's not many Irish tap dancers. So the guy's got a lot of weapons.
Okay. That's good. And then the young lady, what's her name again?
Kate. So Kate, actually, when we were in New York for a week, she actually got invited to be on So You Think You Can Dance.
Okay. So
now she's gone into that, at the tail end of our run in New York, she got on that show, and she's doing her thing, and she's got a whole following.
Okay.
Yeah, great kid. And these are all just people that would have seen Riverdance, turn it into a global phenomenon.
And that shows you where, to me, that shows where your mindset and your approach to everything is a bit different than you may realize, because like I remember when I was touring with Riverdance, there was a kid that was in the company, and he wanted to someday be lead, but he was half Irish and half Filipino, and he was the only one of the company members that would come backstage and work out with the tap dancers. He didn't tap at all Irish step. But he would come and improv with us, and we were like, "Wow, we didn't know y'all could improv." And he's like, "It's not the way. It's not the way of things, but if it's in you, it's in you."
Right.
But that kid, he would be like, and we'd be like, "Man, you're good. You might be the best one here." And he's like, "Yeah, but they'll never make me lead because of how I look. I don't look the part." And so then to know in your company, you got people who some would say don't look the part.
Well, here's a huge difference. Okay, so like when you're doing like a Broadway show or a River, whatever, the sameness becomes like important in some way. And it's spectacle. And Trinity Irish Dance Company, as a nonprofit, but as a company that lives in the performing arts world and sees everything through a performing arts lens. sameness is a drag. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, even if the Beatles were all, I mean, one was the shy one and one was the funny one.
Right.
That cocktail created the Beatles.
Beatles.
I don't want everybody to be the same. And so, part of the beauty and the secret behind the company is just what every individual brings, and then you have people like, we just mentioned Bill T. Jones. I mean, he's got a long history of just not even caring about body types, which is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So he brought a whole, which is Sean Curran, who is now the head of the New York University Dance Department, was Bill T's lead dancer, and he had a little step dancing background in it. And so, I mean, it just doesn't reflect real life. And we're also a mainly female company, so there's a lot of female empowerment that goes on. So the Trinity Irish Dance Company also sort of corrects these wrong-headed notions that society have about women's roles. So these girls bring the thunder massively, like your little sister, right?
Yeah.
And
and that's true. Even, it's funny, and I love that even in that promo pic that you brought in with you, which is the same one that I see all the time, like having them flexing their muscles, that's not something you see usually on a poster featuring all female dancers.
Well, we see all of the dancers as athletes and full stop.
Yeah. So I like that, full stop.
They're powerful.
Yeah.
And they're they're just in complete command of their craft. So I've choreographed so many different pieces in the last 30 years. I've not once felt the need to show cleavage of a dancer in a piece. I mean, if I ever have a reason for that, maybe, but I just haven't found one yet. So, these other shows, these Lord of the Dances and stuff, where all the females are, doing this like fertility dance and the male saviors are jumping around. My associate Chelsea calls them famously. It's just ridiculous. It's sad and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Your dancers they dance.
Yeah, but it's like shouldn't be.
Promoted,
but it is.
Yeah, man. So I'm like I said, I'm glad you came here. I'm glad you came to hang out and talk turkey with me, so to speak.
Brought beautiful bourbon and found out you don't even drink.
Yeah, you did. And I will say, to all past and future podcast guest of the Either And podcast with your host Brill Barrett, Mark is the first one who showed up with a gift. Okay. And even though, again, I don't drink, it was a beautiful bottle that somebody will appreciate.
Because I was weird.
Yeah. It will be consumed, Vanessa says.
You were going to go off and talk about, I think, how you co-choreographed essentially what was probably the best thing about Riverdance, and then got a job touring the world doing that dance. Did you ever tell anybody on tour that you had?
No. It's funny. So when I first got in, and this well, when I first got in Riverdance, one of the first people I called and told was you, because I was like, I'm excited. Like, you were my introduction to the world of Irish dance, and now I'm in this show. And then I feel like you may have shared with me at that point that they were at, was it Milwaukee? Irish Fest in Milwaukee or Navy Pier. That some producers or some folks was.
Oh no, it's more simple than that.
Oh,
no.
Do tell.
No, just there had been this 5-minute incredible Eurovision Song Contest moment, in Europe, and a lot of what we saw in that emanated, like from Trinity Irish Dance Company, but wasn't credited, and the connection there is Mr. Flatley, who's also an amazing talent, but what he surrounds himself with, and then a year later, they came out with a whole show. But what was that show going to be? You and I, in the meantime, did that Navy Pier weekend.
Yep.
And his sister was at that show. My sister saw his sister at that show. So there was a lot more than that going on. There was all the ethnic, the Indian, African dance.
All the
the bow at the end. I mean, if we watch footage of that concert versus the commercial.
Wow.
But then later I worked with Colin, who was
Colin Dunn.
Yeah, the lead guy. And he said that, that piece wasn't quite finished because Flatley took off and started his own show. And there was a lot of controversy. And people,
Yeah.
like who created what and what, and so he was brought in, and that was not completely correct. So he choreographed part of that, and I filled him in. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't." I was like, "Yeah," but anyway, it's all good.
Yeah. But it's, you know, like I say, I'm a firm believer though of giving credit where credit is due.
Well,
and I just wish that would have happened.
You're the one guy in the world. Nobody does that. So I would say though that like you and I live in this incredible space where we can create what we want. This nonprofit world, and you know, if we were filmmakers, we'd probably be independent filmmakers. So we could do it the way we want to do it.
So
we could struggle and we could like create our own stuff and beg for money. And then when we'd come up with good ideas, they might get adopted by Hollywood, which, you know, in fairness, in Hollywood, there's a recipe because they can't afford to lose. It has to already be a winning idea.
It has to work.
And yeah, there's a recipe and all of that. And same thing with Riverdance. You know, you can't afford to pre-record taps because you need them to be heard. You know what I mean? In a big arena. And, you know, I would do the same thing if I was in charge of that show. I would pre-record. But, you know, you have to do the same thing over and over and over and over. So we get to do new work all the time and push boundaries, which is where
I will tell you, the tap dancers in Riverdance used to get in trouble all the time. We got scolded constantly because they didn't pre-record our sounds. We were live every night and we were improvising. So we were not exactly the same every night. And sometimes we got more than one occasion told you're a bit too aggressive.
This is such a black story.
And we're like,
you didn't have anything. We didn't have any microphones. We didn't have any pre-recorded, but yet we had to.
But
when we did it really well, we got scolded.
Exactly. We one time I remember getting told you all are too aggressive, and we're like, it's a battle. We're supposed to not like each other.
Oh God, stand down.
Yeah, and that was it. And we were like, why don't you tell? And the funny thing is, a lot of the Irish guys were like, oh, we'd love to be able to let loose on you. And we're like, well, bring it, because this battle scene will turn into something else. But they were like, no. There's this choreograph. You need to
scare all the people.
You need to calm down.
Bro, you're scaring the people.
Yeah, we had very black stories out of Riverdance. I used to say famously to everybody who would listen, I'm Black Irish.
Right.
And I would say I'm from the west side of Dublin.
That's what Yvonne says, our board member. Yvonne, you know Yvonne.
Yvonne Orr, yeah.
Yvonne Orr is hilarious. My board president at the time was like, our board needs to be diverse. And I'm like, yeah, totally. And I just don't know where am I going to find, the Hispanic person who's really into Irish dancing. But he brings Yvonne to Wicker Park. And we go up into this like fancy bar at the top of the Roby Hotel with my associate artistic director, Chelsea. And he introduces us to Yvonne. And Yvonne just launches into, I'm like, so tell me about yourself. Well, my mother was a Black Panther, and my dad was in some other organization, and he's been a political prisoner in Philadelphia. And I just looked at Brian. I was like, okay, cool. We'll start here. I thought maybe some accountant or somebody. It's like somebody that's amazing lady. And she calls herself Black Irish because she does have Irish blood somehow, and she's a dancer.
Well, I tell people I didn't know that Barrett, my last name, was an Irish name until I got in Riverdance. Yeah. And it was a call sheet. And the first day I went in to sign in that I was there, I went, let's see, Barrett. Right. There's 30 to 40 Barretts. And I was like, okay, so I'm now going to dig and see. I mean, I'm light-skinned, so I could be mixed.
We already know all these stories. We don't hear them again.
So I could be mixed, or maybe my family was owned by Irish slave owners. Like, I don't know. But I was like, but somewhere there's Irish connection there, because I didn't know Barrett was an Irish name. So there you go.
A Riverdance one. Doesn't want you telling that story. But yeah, Norm's Bistro is where I go to. Am I giving a plug to Norm's Bistro now?
Yeah, yes, awesome. You are, which is cool because that's our Bronzeville local eatery.
These cultural differences are amazing. I sat down with Yvonne for dinner, and it was like, I'm going to say a Tuesday in the summer at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. She said, "Do you want shots?" I'm like, "Of what?" That's what we do. We just start with shots on a Tuesday. Yeah,
you're like, absolutely.
Right, I'm in. Let's go.
That's cool. That's cool.
Challenging an Irish guy with shots. You know?
Forgive her, Lord, for she not knew what she did. Well, that's cool, man. Well, I'm glad that you came to hang out with me and have this conversation. And now we got a show to get ready for.
You know, the biggest thing, tell them who Michelle Dorrance is.
Oh, yeah, Michelle Dorrance. So as quickly as I can, I will tell you, when I was teaching on the festival circuit, Michelle Dorrance was in classes. Michelle Dorrance was one of those kids that was in some of my classes. Fast forward to her as a professional. Imagine Tap was the first place we worked together in a professional setting. But she was in a scene, well, she was in a lot of scenes, but one of the scenes was most memorable was that they all played like children in school who were acting up. And Derek Grant had them dancing on top of desk, but like the energy it took to act like to pull off this thing, I was like, man, Michelle is gonna be fire. And this is well before Dorrance dance was a thing. And when we were practicing for Imagine Tap, we were in this little town, Musogana, I don't even know how to say it. It's in Indiana, Musogana, something like that. But we were in this little town, and we were in like this cul-de-sac, and it was like 3 houses, and it was the whole cast of Imagine Tap. And one night we pulled out the mics and we had a DJ that was a part of the show, started spinning, and we started freestyle rapping. Michelle jumps on the mic, and we all had this like freestyle rap battle. And I was like, yeah, Michelle is cool. Michelle is mad cool. So that was way back then. And now fast forward to now, then Dorrance Dance, man. Like, I love watching them. I think the last show of theirs I saw was in, where was I? Tap Festival, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And
well, your audience should know that she's taken Tap into the kind of performing arts, you know,
into the
Joyce Theater.
Yeah.
York,
yeah.
Like the kind of wheelhouse that I live in a bit. And like where you're keeping things so real and authentic and you know, elevating Chicago and being this great, you know, internationally known entity that represents Chicago. She's representing New York and that Broadway and the performing arts thing. And we're like, Savion's done that Broadway stuff, right? You know, she does a bit of that, but she's gone into this performing arts realm, which is good. You know, it's like a contemporary.
I was going to say, I noticed that the contemporary world really appreciates Dorrance Dance.
And so when you take that mind of hers and you add tap dancing, it just like has thrilled audiences.
Yeah.
And she won the MacArthur
Genius Grant. Yep.
And, you know, you can look her up.
She won the Princess Great. Like, she won a bunch of stuff.
You can see her on that Steve Colbert clip, you know. With John Baptiste, like, you know. But anyway, she's just such a good person and thrilled to be seeing what she's bringing to the auditorium.
This is going to be an awesome show.
Huge star in the performing arts world.
Yeah.
Like, massive. She could be touring anywhere.
Yeah, and she often is.
She chose to be here
She chose to come here to Chicago and celebrate with us. Because I think that's what it's going to be. Rhythms of Resistance is literally a celebration of all of our stories, I think.
And you can see all the brochures and what the auditorium's putting out there, whatever the papers will write. But in the background, it's just us three going, let's do something really cool.
Yeah, right.
Cutting edge, next level, right? Like, it's just all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. Thank you again, Mark, for coming to hang out with me and share some words of wisdom and words of history and just words of Mark. You want to leave the listeners and viewers with anything?
Just so excited to be here and so happy to see you thriving. It was cool the other night to be at the University of Chicago.
The Logan Center.
Yeah, that was a big night. A lot of positive energy. And that's all it is about, is positive energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We all come from different backgrounds and a lot of adversity at times, but if we just dig deep and look for the light, everything works out.
That's true.
And,
that's true.
There's going to be a lot of that at the auditorium.
Yep.
So come down.
Come April 22nd.
Yep. And See y'all there.
We'll see y'all there.
Yeah.
All right. This has been Brill Barrett talking with Mr. Mark Howard of the Trinity Irish Dance Company. And this is the Either And Podcast. Signing off. Peace.